This week, can't we all just get along? Actually, yes, we can.
People seem to be predisposed towards cooperation. So it's like people's first instinct is to cooperate, where rational thought makes you selfish.
This is the Nature Podcast. I'm Jeff Brumfield.
And I'm Kerry Smith. From the workplace to the global environment, from politics to charities, human society is to a large extent based on people working together for a common good. But cooperating like this is costly for individuals. So why are we usually willing to cooperate? And how do we decide to help others rather than act selfishly? These are questions that puzzle David Rand at Harvard University. He's been cooperating with some other Harvard folk to explore the cognitive basis of cooperative decision-making, and he spoke to Charlotte Stoddart.
For a long time, when biologists and social scientists studied cooperation, it was mostly from a behavior perspective. It was saying, what can you do to make people cooperate? How can you set systems up so that evolution would favor cooperation? But there wasn't that much looking at what's actually going on inside the heads of people when they're cooperating. So in this study, we tried to really start delving into the actual cognitive psychology of what's going on inside people's heads when they're faced with social dilemmas.
So if I was taking part in your study, what would I have to do?
So we use a very simple experimental game. It's called the public goods game. If you were participating, what you would do is you'd be put in a group with 3 other people, and you'd each get some money, and you'd choose how much to keep for yourself, and then how much you want to contribute to the group, where all of the contributions would be doubled and then split equally among everyone. Key idea is there's this tension between what's good for you and what's good for the group.
Okay, so how did you use the game then to look into cooperation and work out how people were deciding whether or not to cooperate?
So what we did is we basically looked at people that were making their decisions using a more intuitive mindset versus a more rational mindset and compared their behavior. So one way of doing it is we just let people make whatever decision they wanted, and we compared the people that responded quickly to the people that took a long time. And we found that the fast responders were significantly more generous than the slow responders. And then we did other things like we forced people to go fast and saw that increased their contribution, or forced them to go slow, and it decreased it.
Right, and you're assuming here that if people respond quickly, or if they're forced to make a decision quickly, then they're acting on their intuition, and if they take longer or they're given more time, then they're more reflective.
Right, so that's a pretty common methodology in social and cognitive psychology. But to really make formal that link that what's going on is the intuition versus reflection, we had the last experiment where rather than using decision time, what we do is we really primed them specifically about intuition or about reflection and showed that it had the same effect.
So what are we learning about cooperation from that?
So what we're learning from that is that people seem to be predisposed towards cooperation. So it's like people's first instinct is to cooperate, where rational thought makes you selfish.
If you're right and we are intuitively cooperative, does this mean that cooperation is innate, that it's somehow hardwired into our genes?
Our study doesn't really directly speak to that, but I think that we provide evidence that that's not the case. In daily life, where you have repeated interactions and there's reputation and there's the threat of sanctions, all of these kinds of things make it advantageous for you to be cooperative. So you just kind of get used to cooperating because it's a good strategy. And so with that in mind, we did a set of experiments where we show that people that sort of experience the world around them as a cooperative place show the cooperative intuitions that we talk about, whereas people that come from places where they don't experience the world as cooperative, they actually don't have cooperative intuitions.
If we take this to the real world now, we're often encouraged to reflect before we make decisions. And if we think in particular about the United Nations process where they're trying to get international collaboration, that's negotiation, lots of time for reflection. And so your research sounds like really bad news for those kinds of processes.
Yeah, it is a little bit unsettling. I mean, particularly as academics, we're all about rational thought and reflection and things like that. But one thing this certainly seems to suggest is that if you're trying to make appeals to people to get them to be more cooperative, it may not be a good idea to use sort of rational arguments with lots of facts and statistics and things like that, because that may shift them into a more analytical mindset, which then could lead to them being more selfish.
David Rand there. Find his results at nature.com/nature.